Well, the prosecution wants the alleged killer's hospital records, blood tests, CT scans, and they want to know if their suspect was intoxicated 3 days after her arrest in Costa Rica for the murder of her boyfriend's former lover. What might the request be telling us about the strategy to convict Caitlin Armstrong? It's time, folks, for this week's crime recap on Profiling Evil. Hey, well, thanks for stopping by for this week's crime recap on Profiling Evil. I hope you're going to take a moment, hit that like and subscribe button, and make sure you're ringing the bell so you get all of our notifications. Now, we're talking about the case of alleged killer Caitlin Armstrong. You remember Armstrong. She's accused of shooting pro cyclist Mo Wilson repeatedly after reportedly discovering that Wilson was having an affair with her boyfriend. Well, the boyfriend, so far, has had nothing happen to him, but some fingers are starting to point his way. It's really interesting to me because Armstrong's attorney is suggesting that the boyfriend, Strickland, had something to do with the murder, and that his client, Armstrong, is the scapegoat. He points to a vandalism that he says occurred at the apartment that they both occupied the day the murder happened. In fact, I think he suggests it's about the same time. Now, I don't know about you folks, but I haven't seen anything official on a vandalism report or a burglary at Strickland's. Don't you think it would have been one of the first things they reported when police showed up at their home to talk to Wilson after the murder? And if it's accurate that Strickland showed up at home before the murder occurred, I think he would have been calling police to report the destruction. In fact, the hearing was the first time I heard about this, and it came when the lawyer mentioned it after Armstrong's arraignment. That was just last week, almost 7 weeks after Wilson was murdered. Now, Strickland's story was supported by forensics and CCTV. He doesn't appear to be a suspect in the actual shooting of Wilson, at least according to the Armstrong arrest affidavit. But in my opinion, that doesn't exclude a possibility that he could have been involved in a conspiracy that resulted in Wilson's death. Now, again, that's just speculation and a possibility. Haven't seen many probabilities that point that way yet. And that doesn't explain how the weapon that was used in the murder ended up at his home, at least until you hear his explanation, where he says that he purchased 2 handguns from an area firearms dealer about 7 to 8 months ago, and he gave one of those to Armstrong. That same weapon was recovered in Strickland's home later when police searched. Police now have tied the recovered weapon to a spent shell casing found at the murder scene. That's big news. Not only that, though, they also tied the weapon to a bullet that was recovered under the victim's body. What they're not saying is whether they collected any gunshot residue from Armstrong or Strickland on the night that they went over to the apartment. So that leads me to the next interesting piece of evidence that's being sought by Austin police. This week, police requested the gun purchase records where Strickland bought those weapons. Strickland met all the qualification requirements to purchase the weapons, but I think the application form is really what's interesting the prosecutors. It makes me wonder if Armstrong was listed anywhere on those documents. I personally want to know if they filled out any background information that they might want information from. And I'd like to know if either one of them signed up for a firearms training course, since it's been reported that Armstrong and a friend were seen practicing with a weapon at a local gun range before the murder. Now, another reason for securing the purchase and paper trail on that weapon is to prove that Armstrong had reasonable access to the weapon by virtue of her relationship with Strickland. And again, remember, Strickland reportedly purchased them and says he purchased one of them for Armstrong. That paper trail is going to show that the gun legally transferred from the gun store's inventory into Strickland's possession. Now, his testimony, again, is going to show that he purchased the weapon and he purchased it for Armstrong. Additional testimony will show that Armstrong had threatened Wilson and that she also was seen at this gun range practicing. I think evidence is going to come out that shows that the same weapon has been forensically tied to the shell casings and the bullet, and that same weapon was recovered not only in Armstrong's and Strickland's apartment, but the bullet and casing were recovered at the murder scene. And finally, the same weapon that was recovered by police at Strickland's home, again, this place that he shared with Armstrong, is the same weapon tied to the murder. I joined Julie Grant on Court TV this week to talk about the weapon. I thought you might be interested in listening to our exchange. Let's listen in for a moment.
So given what we know, if authorities hadn't captured her when they did, how long could she have possibly stayed on the run? Let me bring in our law enforcement experts to help us answer that question. Tonight in Salt Lake City, Utah, we have retired police commander and the host of the Profiling Evil podcast, Mike King. And in Marietta, Georgia, former police officer and civil attorney Lance LaRusso. Great to see you gentlemen tonight. Commander, that question to you first, please. How long do you think Caitlin Armstrong could have sustained this?
You know, I don't know how long $12,000 would last in Costa Rica, but I'm still wondering where $450,000 is. I mean, we've got this story out there that she has $450,000 worth of investment money that I haven't seen accounted for yet. So, in my opinion, she could have been gone for an awfully long time.
Well, the most interesting piece of evidence police are trying to obtain is the medical records that they've requested on Armstrong. This is from a hospital visit that she had 3 days after she was arrested in Costa Rica. That means for 3 days she was in police custody, and that's why I find this thing so interesting. I mean, I have so many questions regarding this request. Number one, I want to know if Armstrong complained of a medical emergency that prompted the emergency room visit, or did she do something that caused jailers to take her to the hospital? Something like taking an overdose or being under the influence of a drug or alcohol. Or was there a suicide attempt? Now, I say all of this because one of the tests that they're subpoenaing is a blood alcohol test to determine if there was alcohol in her system. That's really interesting. 3 days in custody. Why on earth were they looking for alcohol in her system? Now, another reason for this test may be to get evidence of that rhinoplasty or nose job that she reportedly had. So I'm wondering, are they thinking they could get a before and after comparison of some kind? Are they looking at earlier medical records or only on that day that they brought her into the hospital? I mean, what do you think they're looking for in those medical records? I hope you'll put your answers down below. Now, at the same time I was on with Julie Grant on Court TV, we were joined by a former police officer turned civil rights attorney by the name of Lance LaRusso. Well, Julie then asked Lance about whether or not he thought that Armstrong had any help in getting away with this for so long. Let's listen to his response because I like it.
Appreciate it, Commander. Lance LaRusso, next part of this question to you, please. And we were discussing this a little bit before the break with our guest from the Austin Chronicle. Do you think she had help all this time? Why or why not, please?
I don't see anything she's done so far that indicates to me she couldn't have done this on her own. As a matter of fact, it's hard to be on the run. You got situations where you're suspicious of people, you're trying to watch your every move. When the United States Marshal Service is on you and they're trying to find you, they're an outstanding agency. They have great relationships around the world. They're going to find her. It's just, it surprised me, quite frankly, that she made it this far. It doesn't seem like she was very experienced, doesn't seem like she had thought this out very much. As the commander said, she's going to really travel and get access to $400,000. She might have had a better chance, but $12,000 isn't going to get you very far, especially when you're on the run.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I was really impressed with the response that Lance had on a reason for getting those medical records. It's something that I hadn't thought of. And I was so excited Julie actually gave me a chance to weigh in again. But listen closely to see if you can identify what the important reasoning is for asking for those medical records, according to Lance.
Lance LaRusso, in addition to having law enforcement experience, are also an attorney, and I want to pick your legal brain on this one. When it comes to Caitlin Armstrong's rights here, we know prosecutors are trying to go after those medical records. I can't blame them. I would want to do the same thing, dig up as much as they can. They kind of have that umbrella approach, and what we've seen, everything they're looking to obtain from those records. What about her privacy, though? I would love for you to kindly speak to that aspect of this, looking at it from the defense standpoint, and can her attorney try to fight that? The hospital's turning over those records, and why, if so, please?
So the hospital records usually can be obtained either with a grand jury subpoena or with a search warrant. It sounds like that's kind of what they're doing here. You know, the judge, if asked, would have to make a balance and make a finding as to whether or not they were relevant, whether or not there was an implied waiver, whether or not there was a reason for the records. Now, it could be everything. Everybody's, subjecting that it could be due to some surgery she had, which could be used to say that she was on the run. But, who would you call if you were going on the run? You'd call the most important person to your life. And when you go to the hospital, who do you give as a next of kin or a contact in case of emergency? So one of the reasons they may be doing it is to try to find out anybody else she may have contacted, or, as to your point, anybody who may have assisted her. But this type of balance of the privacy and medical records is done every day throughout the United States with hospitals, even with the newer federal laws that were put in place about 20 years ago.
That's good. That was a really good point you made about them digging through those records for more information. I saw Commander King nodding on the monitor I have here in the studio. He liked that too.
I'm telling you, I'm so glad Lance still has some police blood running through him, because that is absolutely right. And those records are so darn important. And Lance, I hadn't thought about next of kin, but wow, that's important.
Yeah, he sure does still have that police blood running through him. That's why we had him on this segment with you tonight, Commander. Commander Mike King, Attorney Lance LaRusso, so great to have you both weighing in. I know we're going to have plenty more questions for you after we see what these subpoenas yield.
So what are your thoughts about the evidence that's starting to roll in on this case, folks? I hope you'll take a moment, put your thoughts down below, and make sure you're reading and responding to each other. I want to thank Julie Grant and the entire Court TV team for allowing me to join with them each week to talk about the most important cases that are in the courts right now. I hope you're checking them out, and I hope you're subscribing to their channel and to ours. Now, I want to talk about a 12-year-old who was kidnapped and now recovered. Hey everybody, it's Mike from Profiling Evil. I've been studying criminal behavior for more than 40 years, and one of my favorite research tools is Truth Finder. It's online, and you're not going to believe the information stored there. So if you want to know more about that new neighbor, your babysitter, or your next online date, give Truth Finder a try. I'm including a link below with special discount pricing. You got to click the link to get it, and then enter EVIL10 at checkout. We're an affiliate, which means we get a small commission, enough to buy a small Diet Dr. Pepper, but you can cancel at any time. Thanks for listening today. Did you hear about that harrowing escape by the 12-year-old girl in Dadeville, Alabama? She reportedly chewed her way out of the restraints in order to flee from her captor. Initial reports are suggesting that the girl was kidnapped about 7 days before, on July 24th. But there isn't any information about where that kidnapping charge is coming from or where it happened. What we are learning is that the child's mother and brother were also at the mobile home where this kidnapping and this abduction was occurring. It's the same home she escaped from, and both her parent, her mother, and her brother were discovered deceased after police arrested the male homeowner, a guy named Jose Paulino Pascual Reyes. They arrested him and charged him with kidnapping and murder. Murder, you say? Yeah. The evidence is being examined, but it appears that the alleged killer had been romantically involved with the mother of the child, actually of both children, for some time. I say that because police discovered the child's mother had received a traffic citation back in April, and she listed the same address as her personal residence. Now, investigators believe that Reyes smothered the surviving girl's mother with a pillow, and then he beat her 14-year-old brother to death. Then, here it gets pretty ugly. Both the mother and the son were cut into small pieces in order to conceal their bodies. Now, behaviorally, this suggests that the boy might have witnessed the murder of his mother, or he came into the trailer shortly after the murder occurred, discovering the crime. And now Reyes has to get rid of that body. Now, I'm theorizing this based on the mother being smothered, but the boy being beaten to death. Police reports suggest that he was beaten by Reyes's hands and feet. Then, in order to dispose of their bodies, Reyes allegedly cut them both up by dissecting them at the limbs and at the joints, and then cutting them into smaller pieces before preparing them for final disposal, something that was interrupted when he was arrested for that initial kidnapping. Well, if my theory is correct, and I believe the evidence is going to reveal this, Reyes probably then went and picked up that 12-year-old girl. It may have been a scheduled pickup, returning her to the crime scene where he then bound her and assaulted her over the next week. What I'm really interested in this case is Reyes's criminal history, if there is one. If he has a sexual attraction to young girls, the entire grooming of the mother and the eventual murder of her and the brother may have been all an elaborate scheme just to get access to his preferential victim, the 12-year-old girl. It's going to be interesting to learn more about this alleged killer, who reportedly is illegally in the United States right now. I'm going to be surprised if he doesn't have an arrest history that coincides with facts of this case, things that say a 12-year-old girl was of focus, and things that say that 12-year-old girl who was restrained to a bedpost and subjected to sexual abuse was a target, not just something that happened. This guy controlled this child by drugging her with alcohol, but thankfully she had the presence of mind to devise an escape plan based on the predator's schedule. When he left her alone for a short time, she began chewing her way out of the restraints. It was so difficult that she damaged the braces that she had on her teeth. But once she got out of the house, she ran down the road where a passerby noticed her and dialed 911, bringing law enforcement into the picture and bringing this siege to an end. The child is now in protective custody and receiving treatment, while the alleged killer, he sits in a Tallapoosa jail cell. Now, this child's mother and brother's remains are being examined and then being prepared for burial. And we're undoubtedly going to learn a whole lot more about this case in the coming weeks. We'll keep watching this. But I want to thank Julie Grant and the entire Court TV team for allowing me to join them in discussing these relevant criminal cases. I really enjoy getting on each week with them, and I hope you'll check out Court TV for the entire interview. And please, folks, take a moment. Enter your thoughts on this week's crime recap down below. I'm going to be watching for your comments, and I want to say thanks for supporting us at Profiling Evil. I hope you'll take time to visit our website at profilingevil.com, where you can register for our B.O.L.O, a free digital newsletter. And there you can check out our amazing story maps. So please hit that like and subscribe button. Consider joining our channel memberships. And remember, my favorite's the Academy level. But know that when you join our channel memberships, your financial support helps us to continue to put out content like this. Know that we appreciate you, folks, and we'll see you all soon at the next crime scene.